Origin Chance, home Rex, and this is why the F-15 terrified the Soviet by John Mustard. I saw the F-15 video from Fat Nutrition, which was an insane video. Like F-15 was just like way too OP, right? And apparently like F-16 has like one engine, while F-15 has two, if I remember correctly, which is like okay. So yeah, F-15 was like when I watched the Federation video, I mean I already knew about F-15 and F-16, but didn't know it was that level of OP. So I'm guessing like there's gonna be more information in this one. I don't know, but yeah, Federation covered things really well. But about the Soviets, was there a Soviet counterpart to this? What was the like F-15 competitor? Something Meg or something? I don't know, but it's gonna be interesting. Let's watch it. Remember, we'll flag my reaction. Don't forget to subscribe so that way I know which type of videos to react to more. Check out the reaction. There's a link in the description. There you'll find the Federation reaction, everything else. Check out the end card, and yeah, let's watch it.
Be a new super fighter, and it sets off alarm bells.
We currently have no fighter in our operational inventory that could consistently, if successfully, combat the Foxbat. It is thought to have multiple air-to-air and long-range air-to-surface missile capability at a speed of Mach 3.
With the United States and Soviet Union locked in a struggle for air superiority, the Soviets seemed to be winning. Faced with the prospect of being outclassed in the skies, the United States would respond by engineering the greatest fighter jet in history.
Isn't the Foxbat? I'm pretty sure I saw a video. Is it the same one? Like there was a Soviet plane that was like on paper really powerful, but it's like disintegrating everything. Was it made out of steel? I don't know. There was a video I'm pretty sure I saw about. Is this that one? That everybody was terrified, like, oh, that's a really powerful plane, but it was like never really working.
In the Korean War, early fighter jets like the American F-86 and Soviet MiG-15 squared off in fierce air-to-air battles. Both were light, agile jets built for close-range dogfighting. But by the mid-1950s, new technologies were beginning to radically transform fighter aircraft design. Powerful new radars could detect the enemy from much greater distances, while newly introduced guided missiles could hit targets kilometers away. Military planners grew convinced that air battles of the future would be fought beyond visual range, where the enemy wouldn't be more than a distant blip on a radar screen. And it meant the newest fighter jet, the F-4 Phantom, was no longer light or agile. It was fast, heavily loaded with missiles, and carried a powerful radar. Many believed that dogfighting had become obsolete. But in reality, nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah, dogfighting didn't go anywhere. There was a fight in India, I think, between India and Pakistan. Was it? Yeah, something like that. Was it F-16 or F-15 was involved with Russian MiG? India had MiG. Pakistan has some F-15, F-16, right? It was a like dogfighting thing. MiG won, but I guess, I don't know, like MiG was like clearly like the old technology compared to it. But I guess it depends on the person who's flying it. But yeah, that was a surprise thing. Like, okay, how the fuck that happened?
In the Vietnam War, the Air Force's new approach was put to the test. But things didn't go as planned. The skies over Vietnam were a chaotic mix of enemy and friendly aircraft, and the systems designed to help Air Force pilots identify the enemy proved unreliable, forcing pilots to get in close to visually confirm each target. The whole idea of engaging from a distance fell apart. The new F-4 Phantoms were pulled into close-quarter dogfights against more agile MiGs, something their pilots had never been trained to do, and the Phantoms' guided missiles proved hopelessly inaccurate. Designed for larger, high-altitude targets, initially only 14% ever hit anything. And when the missiles failed, pilots were left defenseless, because the F-4 was built without a gun for close combat.
What
the larger,
fuck?
less maneuverable Phantom.
Oh my god, they put all of their chips in one basket that it has to be from like a distance away. If you build something like that, of course it's going to be completely screwed if you close quarters. Like, oh my god. This would have been one of the most terrifying fights of all time, like F-4 with those MiGs.
With their notoriously smoky engines were easily spotted. The more agile MiGs lured the F-4s in close, knowing they were vulnerable.
The F-4 Phantom just barely held its own in this airspace because it is an interceptor used as a fighter, finding it difficult to compete with a fighter designed as a fighter.
American pilots were being downed at alarming rates. and military planners were learning that the age of dogfighting was far from over. Air Force planners scrambled to respond, equipping the F-4 with pod-mounted Gatling guns and training pilots to engage the more maneuverable MiGs. But these were stopgap solutions. What the Air Force really needed was a new dedicated air.
I mean, yeah, you can't just like patch it up. It's not supposed to have this kind of maneuverability the MiGs have. You need a nimble plane. You can't just like, oh, we'll just put Gatling and that will solve it. Like, how?
Superiority fighter, and it meant scrapping every one of its earlier concepts for the next generation of fighter aircraft, which now looked too large, too heavy, and likely to fare even worse than the Phantom. And they'd have to move quickly, because in 1967, the Soviet Union unveiled a new fighter of their own, and it looked nothing like the MiGs that F-4 Phantoms were squaring off with in Vietnam. Everything seemed to suggest a fighter built for extreme maneuverability, with twin tails, a massive wingspan.
I think this is the plane I'm thinking of when I think of Soviet plane that just didn't work. Something failed catastrophically. Even though it was like a terrifying leap, something was not working if I remember correctly.
And monstrous engines. Intelligence experts suspected that the Soviets were using advanced lightweight materials along with new radar and weapon systems. A few months later, the Soviets went on a record-setting spree, posting new world speed and altitude records with the new fighter. Officials suspected the worst.
Bombs are
We
killing
currently
me.
have no fighter in our operational inventory that could consistently, if successfully, combat the Foxbat.
If the experience in Vietnam wasn't concerning enough, the Soviet Union now looked ready to unleash a new super fighter. After spending the better part of 2 decades building mostly interceptors, fighter bombers, and attack aircraft, the Air Force finally set its sights on building a state-of-the-art air superiority fighter. In 1968, leading U.S. aircraft designers were invited to submit proposals. Their entries would be assessed using a groundbreaking concept called energy maneuverability, a mathematical formula to help define a fighter's total performance in terms of speed.
I like how they call it FX. X means, if I don't know, experimental, right? For some reason, like there's a plane called X-15 or X-5, I don't remember exactly, which is like the fastest plane of all time or something, like hypersonic speeds, which mostly they just used in NASA's and something like that to throw shit out of the atmosphere or something. But it was like an insane speed, 6,000 miles per hour or something like that, right? I'm pretty sure that was like, I don't think that there is any use for that in any kind of combat. So that was mostly just used for satellites and many things related to space-related things.
Thrust, drag, and weight. In December 1969, the contract to build the new fighter was awarded to McDonnell Douglas. Their design was the product of 2.5 million man-hours of effort, allowing development to begin immediately. The F-15 Eagle was designed from the ground up for tactical dominance in any airspace. 2 afterburning turbofans could unleash a massive 48,000 pounds of combined thrust. Enough.
Yeah, F-16 has just one of these, right? This has 2. I'm pretty sure F-16 has 1. That's the only difference, right?
Power to break the sound barrier even while flying straight up. With a top speed of over Mach 2.5, the F-15 would be the fastest fighter jet ever produced by the United States. For peak performance, the engines were fitted with variable air intakes, with a computerized air inlet control system adjusting to ensure optimal airflow at any speed or angle of attack. Where earlier fighters like the F-4 had a reduced wing area for high supersonic speeds, in the F-15 engineers instead opted for low wing loading, which combined with a high thrust-to-weight ratio delivered superior maneuverability. For maximum situational awareness, the cockpit was mounted high in the fuselage with a canopy offering a commanding 360-degree view, along with a
What is that? What is this, a Mr. Mustard in the design? Okay.
high thrust-degree view, along with a digital heads-up display fully integrated with radar and avionics. 8 Sparrow and Sidewinder missiles were mounted under the wings and along the fuselage. But if things got up close and personal, a 20mm Gatling gun could dish out 6,000 rounds a minute. And for maximum survivability, engineers designed in triple redundant hydraulics, low vulnerability flight controls, and a reinforced airframe. With its combination of speed, power, and agility, the F-15 was ready to earn its place as one of the greatest fighters ever built.
Seriously, even to date.
The first prototype was unveiled in June 1972, just 3 years after McDonnell Douglas was given the go-ahead. The new fighter was put through an extensive testing program, and it would have to prove itself against the best of what the Air Force had to offer. Up against the heavy F-4 Phantom, the F-15 looked assured and in control, easily making quick work of the interceptor.
Yeah, Charlie Howell's nosing on me, but I'm in deep trouble here. F-4, you're about to get gunned.
Even the smaller, lighter F-5, used to simulate more agile MiG fighters in combat, struggled to shake the larger F-15.
Overhead. I can't do anything about it. Box 1 on the F5, nose down.
In nearly every engagement, whether beyond visual range or close-in dogfighting, the F-15 commanded an overwhelming advantage. With a true air superiority fighter on their hands, the Air Force was ready to send a message to the Soviet Union. Only a year and a half.
Yeah, see, whenever we think of, like, even in games like GTA, whenever we think of jet fighters, this, like, F-15, F-16 is the one that comes up, right? Like, this is, like, one of the most insane, like, they're basically best aerodynamic, best jet, best propulsion and everything, best of all around, and one of the most nimble design, like, nothing left on table. Let's try to make best out of everything. There you go. Even to date, even with something like F-35, which I feel like is not as successful as F-15, F-16s, right? Even to date, F-15 and F-16 is, like, insane.
Half earlier, the Soviets posted new time-to-climb world records with the MiG-25. Now, the F-15 was about to erase them. In 1975, engineers stripped a pre-production F-15 of its non-mission critical components, even removing its paint to make it as light as possible. In the cold, dense air of North Dakota, the Eagle made a series of climbs from a dead stop, rocketing up to altitudes as high as 30 kilometers, right to the edge of the Earth's stratosphere. Not only did the F-15 beat the MiG's records, it shattered them by more than 25%. The Air Force had a winner on their hands, and the F-15 Eagle would come to be recognized as one of the most successful fighter development programs in history. By 1974, the fighter was already in mass production, with over 400 early F-15A and B models ordered for the U.S. Air Force. And America's allies were also eager to get their hands on the new jet. The first foreign operator was Israel, beginning in 1976, followed by Japan a couple years later, and Saudi Arabia. And with some of the first F-15s being deployed at West German air bases, right on the Soviet Union's doorstep, it seemed only a matter of time before the new fighter faced off against the MiG-25.
Yeah. Alright, that is such an insane thing, right? Like them facing off. Like, did that kind of shit happen? Like, it's Cold War. I always assumed like Cold War had like really limited altercation. If, like, you know, jets basically attack each other, isn't like the war is already there? Or did they slide away? Like, okay, some skirmishes happen, some jets attack, some dogfight happens. Like, it's the everyday thing. Why does it matter? Was that the case? Because the whole point of Cold War is like nobody directly did anything war related. Otherwise, it would just like all hell would break loose.
In 1976, the Americans finally got a first-hand look at the Soviet Union's superfighter. But it wasn't what they were expecting. In September of that year, Lieutenant Viktor Belyenka, a 29-year-old pilot with the Soviet Air Defense Forces, made a fateful decision to escape the Soviet Union. And he did it by secretly flying his MiG-25 from a Soviet airbase in the Far East to a civilian airport in Japan. After more than a decade shrouded in mystery, the Americans got a chance to examine the Foxbat down to every last detail. Although similar in size and appearance, the MiG-25 and F-15 had almost nothing else in common. Built mostly out of heavy nickel-steel alloy, the Foxbat weighed nearly twice as much as the F-15. The large wings weren't for agility, they were needed just to get the monstrous jet airborne. The enormous weight meant that the MiG-25 could only pull a 4.5G maneuver. The F-15 was capable of nearly twice that. Most of what the MiG carried was fuel needed to feed its enormous engines. Even so, its combat radius was a mere 300 kilometers. Its avionics used outdated vacuum tubes, and its radar lacked look-down capability, meaning it couldn't even detect an F-15 flying below its horizon. The MiG-25 was anything but the dogfighting monster the Americans had feared. It was purely a
I love it whenever like Americans think like Soviet there's some insane thing, they just went even more crazy just to realize like Soviet never had that. Like that was a fantasy and we overdone the fantasy. Imagine the craziness. MiG-25, oh my god, is like insane. Like this is what I was talking about. I'm pretty sure I saw a video about this where they're just hyping you up before they got their hands on and realized that that was nowhere near what they thought. So it was MiG-25s apparently. Foxbat or whatever, right? So imagine that, like, oh my god, this is like a mythical type of plane, like too insane, too powerful. We need to have something better. They make something better just to realize that they never had that in the first place. So they basically overdone the fantasy itself.
high-altitude interceptor designed to reach incredible speeds to catch enemy bombers, but it wasn't built to do much else. The Soviets had kept the Foxbat's capabilities a closely guarded secret, cashing in on its propaganda value and the alarm it had caused the Americans. But now it was the Soviets' turn to panic, because in 1976 the Soviet Union had no fighter that stood any chance of surviving a fight with an F-15. F-15s scored their first victories in 1979, when Israeli pilots downed 4 Syrian MiG-21s in a single engagement.
Damn.
Over the years, the Eagle would win air battle after air battle, clearing the sky.
Oh, look at that Gulf War, 32 air-to-air victories in the Gulf War. Wait a minute, isn't the Gulf War 91 one, right? I saw the video about that from Faraday, and that's the Gulf War, right? Damn, it is insane, like 32. South is also like 2. Most victories come from Gulf War, I guess. Now there is another one, 38. Yeah, Israelis against Lebanon War, 1982. Damn, okay. Israelis won a lot with this one.
As of adversaries, almost as a matter of routine. Today, F-15s have racked up more than 100 victories without a single defeat, a record unmatched by any fighter in history. Early F-15A and B models were soon joined by C and D variants, improving on the aircraft's range, payload, and weapon systems. Originally conceived
Oh, it's a single seat, twin seat.
as an air superiority fighter, the F-15 would also be developed into a formidable ground attack aircraft, leveraging the fighter's superior range, speed, and payload. Nearly a half-century after taking to the skies, the F-15 remains vital to the U.S. Air Force, with deliveries beginning in 2021 of the F-15EX, a thoroughly modernized replacement for the F-15C. The MiG-25 was
Modernized as in like equipment, right? Like mostly the jet and everything is the same. Well, otherwise, why would they call it F-15? So it's everything's basically the same, but technology changed, like some electronic computer and things like that.
never designed to combat an air superiority fighter like the F-15. But in January of 1991, the two Cold War icons came face to face over the skies of Baghdad. And the outcome wasn't what anyone could have predicted. Because what the MiG-25 lacked in maneuverability, it made up for in raw power as the fastest fighter of all time. And the Iraqis would use it to their advantage, devising a daring plan to ambush F-15 Eagles as they patrolled the skies. You can learn about this incredible air battle in my next video coming exclusively to Nebula this month. Nebula is where you can watch a growing number of exclusive.
Yeah, well, go to original video page link and support this channel from there. Damn, I mean, like I said, India versus Pakistan thing happened very recently, just a few years ago, between F-16, was it F-15? I don't know, one of the two, versus MiG. India had the MiG and MiG won. I guess, like I said, like, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know which MiG was that, but it was considered like old technology, so probably not the direct competitor of F-15 or whatever. But yeah, even then, people were surprised. But I guess it comes down to the pilot and experience of it. I don't know. Yeah, but so this is just insane. F-15 was so insane that Fox, whatever they had, right, the Soviet ones, which is supposed to be OP, but was mostly fiction, and they overdid that. So imagine how hardcore you must have to be. And even today, like even after all these decades, F-15 is just fine. You don't need another one. Like all the technology that was developed just like 5-6 decades ago, whatever, still is working today, and nobody's making another replacement of it because they don't need to. What's the point? I'm pretty sure they made F-35, but I don't think that worked, right? Is the F-35 newer version of F-15? Because it's F numbers, like I don't know, it's like it's not, there's no, I think, direct correlation. Because there's also like F-22 Raptor or something. Like I'm pretty sure that's not the same and fast as like F-15, right? Or is that the old one? I don't know. Numbering is really confusing. But are the F-13's replacement of F-15? And if I remember last, like they didn't work that well. Like there was some problem with it, right? I don't know. But F-15s are a legend. I knew that. The factory some video said like how insane that was, and also this video, this is just completely insane. Right, but that was why the F-15 terrified the Soviet by channel Mustard. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you next time.